This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. I am your host, Darren McKee, and with me, as usual, is Adam Gardner.
What's up, cuboids?
We have a great show for you today, something a little different. As you know, we are thoughtful and concerned about AI here on The Reality Check, but we haven't used much of that in the production of our show itself. This time, though, I thought we'd have AI take the wheel, so to speak. You may have heard me mention NotebookLM months ago, which is a Google AI-powered research and note-taking tool that uses your uploaded documents to create a personalized AI expert, allowing you to ask questions, summarize, and organize information from those sources. But it also does podcast on demand. You upload some files, some links if you want, you click a button, and within minutes, you get a podcast generated on that topic by two simulated people going back and forth in probably more of a popular AM radio kind of way than we might say it here. And I was curious, well, what would they do if I gave it the introduction to my book, Uncontrollable? So I uploaded the intro, clicked a button. A couple minutes later, a 15-minute podcast comes out. We're going to play that for you in just a moment, and then we're going to briefly talk about it. Enjoy.
Ever notice how some of the brightest minds in history, they get things spectacularly wrong?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, take Lord Rutherford, right?
Okay.
The father of nuclear physics, basically.
Right.
In 1933, he called atomic energy, get this, moonshine. Utter moonshine.
Wow.
And then,
Wow.
just a bit over 10 years later.
Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Talk about an underestimation.
That's putting it mildly. And that kind of, missing the mark, not seeing how fast science can move and what it can do, well, that's what we're diving into today.
Interesting.
Because there are some seriously smart people out there who are saying, you know what, we might be making the same mistake.
Really?
With AI.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm listening.
So for everyone out there who loves science, who likes to think critically about this stuff, who's keeping up with AI and wants to understand what's actually going on, we've been digging into Darren McKee's book, Uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable.
Yeah, and this is your guide, basically, to the key ideas, the really important stuff about where AI might be heading.
Okay.
And McKee's main point is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We're messing up, just like Rutherford, because we're not taking seriously how fast AI is developing and the real dangers that come with it.
It's interesting you bring up Rutherford, right? Because it wasn't that he wasn't smart. Obviously, the guy was a genius.
Right.
But he completely underestimated how fast we can go from understanding something basic to actually using it, And then all the unexpected things that happen after that.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really powerful comparison to what's happening now with AI, especially this idea of artificial superintelligence.
Absolutely. So let's get into this astonishing pace of AI progress that McKee keeps talking about.
Okay.
He has this timeline in the book. And when you actually see it all laid out, it's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Think about it. 2011, AI wins Jeopardy.
Right.
Then just 5 years later, boom, AlphaGo beats a world champion at Go. 2019, AI is crushing it at poker. 2020, it cracks the protein folding problem.
Huge.
And then all of a sudden, in 2022, AI is creating art that's winning awards, writing essays that could pass at a university. And last year, it even passes the bar exam.
That is a lot to take in.
It's not just like little steps forward either. It's like massive leaps. And even the people deep in the AI world, they were caught off guard.
So what's driving all of this? How is this happening so fast?
Well, McKee says it's like three things coming together, all super powerful.
Okay.
First, computing power. It's just exploding, growing exponentially.
Right.
We have computers now that are so much stronger than even 10 years ago, so we can solve problems that we couldn't even touch before.
Okay.
Second, all the data. I mean, the internet is just a fire hose of information, text, images, code, you name it.
Yeah.
And AI can use all of that to learn.
Makes sense.
And then the third thing, the algorithms themselves.
The brains of the operation.
Exactly. They're getting better and better at finding patterns in all that data, making sense of it, and using all that computing power to do incredible things.
So it's like a perfect storm.
It really is. And McKee says this acceleration, it's not slowing down. It might even speed up. And it's not just about beating games or science problems.
Right.
It's impacting our lives, like right now.
How so?
Think about those image generators, right?
Yeah.
They've changed how creative work gets done. Like,
Yeah.
totally.
Mm.
And chatbots, they're getting more and more sophisticated every day.
True.
This isn't just some theory. It's affecting how we work, how we live, how we interact with the world.
Absolutely. And it's exciting to think about the potential benefits, right? Like, you think about things like finance or healthcare.
Right.
AI could make things so much more efficient, come up with solutions we haven't even thought of.
Yeah.
But McKee says, hold on, we have to look at the potential downsides too.
Right.
It's not just about AI doing our jobs for us. It's about the possibility of AI becoming smarter than us.
And that's where this whole idea of artificial superintelligence comes in.
Right.
And McKee's very specific about what he means by that.
How so?
He's not talking about AI that's just a bit better than humans at certain things. He's talking about AI that is way smarter, like across the board, more intelligent than almost all humans, maybe even all humans.
That's a whole other level.
It is, and it's something we have to think about seriously.
So what does that future look like? I mean, with superintelligence, where do we go from there?
Well, McKee lays out two very different possibilities.
Okay.
Like, on one hand, you have this utopian vision, right?
Right.
The superintelligence solves all our problems, disease, climate change, everything, and we enter this golden age.
Okay.
But then there's the flip side.
The dystopian one.
Yeah, where superintelligence, maybe because we didn't plan for it right or because it just doesn't care about us, becomes this existential threat.
Wow.
And, this isn't just science fiction stuff. McKee actually quotes Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, a real leader in AI research.
Oh, wow.
And Hassabis says, look, we can't just rush into this move fast and break things attitude, not with something as powerful as AI.
That's a pretty strong statement coming from someone like him.
It is. It's like he's saying, hey, we need to be careful here. These systems, they're getting so complex, so powerful, that we might not even understand how they'll behave.
That's a bit unsettling.
It is. And McKee keeps reminding us about times in history when we totally underestimated how quickly technology could change.
Okay.
Like he talks about how the New York Times said flying machines were basically impossible millions of years away.
Right.
And then, boom, the Wright brothers take flight.
Crazy.
Or how Einstein was skeptical about actually using nuclear energy.
Right.
And then, well, you know what happened there.
Yeah.
The point is, our brains, they get stuck in what we already know, and it makes it hard to see what's possible.
So we're limited by our own experience.
Exactly. And McKee says we're doing the same thing with AI. We see all these risks, these warnings, and we think, nah, that's not realistic.
Right.
But then look how fast things like Midjourney or ChatGPT have blown past what anyone expected, even the experts.
Sure.
It's like we can't grasp how fast things can change, how quickly things can go from impossible to everyday life. And this is where McKee gets really bold.
Oh.
He says, look, artificial superintelligence, it could be here within the next 10 years.
Wow.
And he says there's a real chance it could be a huge threat to, well, everything, to civilization itself.
So he's saying it's not just a sci-fi fantasy.
He's saying we can't rule it out.
It's a scary thought.
It is. And he's not saying it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
But he's saying, look, nobody can say for sure it won't.
I see. So what do we do? I mean, how do we even wrap our heads around something like that?
That's the hard part, right?
Right.
McKee says we have to be careful about dismissing AI risk as just like fantasy.
Right.
But we also can't just run around screaming that the world is ending.
Okay. So what's the right approach?
He says the problem is we can't even really imagine what superintelligence would be like, what it could do.
Right, because it would be smarter than us.
Exactly. And because of that, we can't really understand how vulnerable we might be.
It's like trying to predict the moves of a grandmaster chess player when you're just learning the game.
Exactly. And, we look to science fiction for ideas, but even that's limited because, like McKee says, so much of what used to be science fiction is just reality now.
So we're kind of flying blind.
In a way, yeah. And that's why he keeps bringing up the comparison to nuclear weapons. It's like back in the 1930s, people didn't understand the danger of atomic bombs.
Right. They couldn't imagine it.
Exactly. And McKee says we're making the same mistake with AI, not really grasping the potential for really bad things to happen.
And that's a sobering thought, especially when you think about, how nuclear weapons have changed the world.
It is. McKee points out that even though they have some benefits, they've also created this constant global threat, something we've never had before.
It's true. There are thousands of nuclear weapons out there ready to launch at a moment's notice.
And they destroy everything in minutes.
Yeah.
McKee uses this analogy of ordering pizza. Like imagine you order a pizza, and in the time it takes for it to arrive, the world could end.
Wow. That's chilling.
It is. And the scary thing is, even with this threat hanging over us, we just go about our lives. We get distracted. We worry about other things.
It's human nature, I guess.
But McKee's point is, our world is fundamentally less safe now than it was before.
And he's saying the same thing could happen with superintelligence.
Exactly. We might think everything's normal, but underneath it all, there's this huge risk, this vulnerability.
And the worst part is that it might not even be intentional.
Right. McKee says the danger isn't necessarily that AI is going to become evil or want to destroy us.
Okay.
The risks could be much more subtle, harder to predict.
Like what?
He talks about things like AI being used to design new bioweapons, which is terrifying enough.
Yeah.
Or using AI to manipulate people, to spread misinformation, to mess with elections.
Which is already happening to some extent.
It is. And then he talks about this idea of indifferent artificial superintelligence, which is where it gets really scary.
Indifferent.
Yeah, like imagine a superintelligence that's just focused on its own goals, things that have nothing to do with us.
Okay.
It could cause huge harm just as a side effect, like a virus.
I see.
It wouldn't even be trying to hurt us. We just wouldn't matter to it.
Like ants underfoot.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And McKee says this isn't some far-fetched idea. It's a logical outcome based on what we know about AI now and how it's developing.
That's disturbing.
It is.
Okay.
And all of this is happening within what McKee calls this race to save the world.
A race.
Yeah, but it's not a simple race. It's more like all these different races happening at the same time, pulling us in different directions. On one side, you have our desire for progress, for new technology, and all the money that's driving that.
Right.
But on the other side, we're not so good at understanding the risks that come with that progress, and we're not so good at preventing them.
I see. So it's like we're racing towards the future, but we're not sure if we're building the brakes.
Exactly. And McKee says, look at what's happened just since ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago.
Okay.
It's been this crazy whirlwind of activity.
Like what?
Well, Google freaked out. They called it a code red.
Really?
Yeah. Microsoft poured billions into OpenAI.
Wow.
Then GPT-4 came out, even more powerful.
Right.
Some big names wrote an open letter saying, hey, we need to pause development.
Interesting.
Jeffrey Hinton, like one of the godfathers of AI, he went public with his concerns.
Wow.
Governments started having hearings talking about regulation. Then you have all these other AI models popping up, like competing with each other.
So it's a free-for-all.
Kind of, yeah. And then the UN saying, hey, we need a new agency to oversee all this.
Wow.
And then even more investment from Amazon, Google. It just goes on and on.
That sounds chaotic.
It is. And then you add in this whole competition between countries, especially the U.S. and China.
Right. The AI arms race.
Exactly. The U.S. wants to stay ahead. But the thing is, when they try to restrict access to technology like advanced computer chips,
Okay.
it can actually help China because they just try harder to steal the technology or they use open source models.
So it backfires.
Yeah. And McKee's point is, in a race to build something that could destroy us all, nobody wins.
That's a good point.
And then there's this other imbalance he talks about.
What's that?
The number of people working on making AI more powerful compared to the number of people working on making sure it's safe.
And what's the ratio?
Like 100 to 1.
Wow. That's a huge gap.
It is, and it's a problem.
Yeah, it's like we're putting all our effort into building the engine, but not the steering wheel.
Exactly. And what's really crazy is that even the people building the most advanced AI, they're starting to admit that this is dangerous.
Really?
Yeah, the Center for AI Safety, they put out a statement,
Huh.
and the CEOs of some of the biggest AI companies signed
I
it.
bet say.
They basically said, hey, this stuff could wipe us out.
Wow.
So even they're acknowledging the risk.
So are they doing anything about it?
Well, they've created this thing called the Frontier Model Forum, which is supposed to be about collaboration and safety.
Okay.
But at the same time, they're still pushing ahead, making AI even more powerful.
So it's like they're trying to put on the brakes while still flooring the gas pedal?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And while governments are starting to talk about regulation and stuff, McKee says it's probably not enough. He says if we had taken this seriously earlier, if we had been more careful from the start, we wouldn't be in this mess.
That's a good point.
And he really pushes back against this idea that superintelligence will just be safe by default.
Right. Like, don't worry, it'll all work out.
Exactly. He says, look at history.
Okay.
Almost every powerful technology we've created has started out dangerous.
Like fire.
Yeah, or cars, or airplanes, or nuclear power.
True.
We had to work hard to make them safer, and we learned a lot of lessons along the way, often painful ones.
Right.
And with superintelligence, the stakes are so much higher.
It's not like we get a do-over if we mess this up.
Exactly. So after all of this, what's the main takeaway from McKee's book?
He's basically saying, look, artificial superintelligence is probably coming whether we like it or not.
Right.
We don't know if we can control it, and we're definitely not ready for it.
And he gets that this is all pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
But he says, don't ignore it. Don't just shut down.
Okay.
We have to face these questions like, how do we control something smarter than us?
Right.
How do we make sure it doesn't decide to get rid of us?
Or ignore us completely.
Yeah, how do we even know when it's here?
And if we decide it's too dangerous, can we even stop it?
These are huge questions. And McKee says they might be the most important questions humanity has ever faced.
Wow.
And he's calling for, everyone to get involved, scientists, philosophers, policymakers, everyone, to try to figure this out before it's too late.
So it's not just a problem for tech people.
No, it's a problem for everyone. And he ends the book with this idea that knowing about the future, being able to see what's coming, that's power. He's saying, you, the listener, you have to learn about this. You have to form your own opinion so you can help shape the future instead of just letting it happen to you.
Makes sense.
And he uses this analogy of AI being like the new fire.
Okay.
He's saying, look at all these recent breakthroughs, all this progress.
Right.
Is it just like dinner being cooked?
Okay.
Or is it a small fire that we can control that can warm us and help us?
Right.
Or is it the beginning of a huge, uncontrollable inferno?
That could burn everything down.
That's the question he leaves us with. So that's our deep dive into artificial superintelligence, as explored in Darren McKee's Uncontrollable. It's pretty clear that AI is advancing at an incredible rate.
Yeah.
And that brings amazing opportunities, but also some really big risks.
Risks that we need to take seriously.
And as McKee himself says, and I'm paraphrasing here, he can't think of a more important issue for us to address. And he hopes we'll all join him in trying to figure it out.
So what do you think? Where do we go from here?
Well, that's something for all of us to consider, right?
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, this conversation is just beginning.
Yeah. It's definitely something we all need to be thinking about.
And that's it for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's been fascinating.
We'll see you next time.
Until then.
Welcome back, listeners. What did you think? Were those hosts better than Darren and Adam? Are we at the risk of losing our jobs? So given I wrote the material it is based on, I was amazed pretty much the whole time. Even though I've heard podcasts that are based on this sort of thing before using NotebookLM, I haven't had it use my own material. And although it is in a style that I personally don't love, that's not the types of podcasts that I tend to listen to, I think it is very impressive nonetheless. There are one or two moments of odd dead space or odd pauses, very subtle, but I could tell just it's almost like someone was looking at a note and they didn't know what to say for a second. But it's very, very, very impressive.
Yeah, the style of speaking was so reminiscent of daytime talk shows or things like that. Obviously, this is what AI is good at. It's good at language, which even all these years later is just surprising to me that it's so good at it. So yeah, very impressed.
So we wanted to share it mainly as this is the current state of AI. Now, maybe there's a more advanced model that's less easy to use, but that's the one I chose. And I know you can manipulate and change things around where sooner or later, right, you're going to have a wide range of different hosts and different styles to choose from. When I picked kind of a customize button, I did say, present as if you're talking to something like an intelligent audience that is concerned about critical thinking and science and already has some familiarity with artificial intelligence. That's what I gave it as a bit of extra. I did not do a side-by-side comparison of what would it do with that and what would it do without it and tweaking further and back and forth. But I just thought people might think all right, let's see what it is. And then this is us. This is our real voices. But maybe we'll train some AIs to have our voices and then, outsource the whole thing and just get it automated.
I think the advantage of using something like this is that, it's just not a couple of Canadian sounding guys talking. People won't confuse our voices as much,
What are you talking about? Well, listeners, it was just a quick one for today. Thanks for trying out this little experiment with us. And by the way, if you did get my book, Uncontrollable, available on Amazon, and did happen to like it, I would love a review on Amazon. It really helps spread the good word. Until next time, think better, act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Outtakes.
Totally. Really. Yeah. You don't say.